Hey guys, I'm Miss Haridas and this is the Study Hive. So the main learning objectives of today's lesson is really to understand the difference between what a prokaryotic cell is versus a eukaryotic cell, and also all the different functions of the subcellular structures of both animal, plant and bacterial cells. So if you look at my slide in front of you, you can see I have keywords there that you just need to pay attention to. So you might see the word prokaryotic and eukaryotic, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. The organelle, so when I say the word organelle, it's the same as saying a subcellular structure. So all the little structures found within the cell is called an organelle. And examples of organelles that you'll learn today is things like the nucleus, mitochondria, cytoplasm, vacuoles, and cell walls and ribosomes. So they're all examples of things that you might find within a plant or an animal cell. So before we even go into understanding cells, we really want to understand, why do we need to learn about cells? What relevance does it have to your life and to my life? So let's look at some examples of where cell biology is really important. So forensics, for example, they really rely on cell biology and DNA fingerprinting in order to solve murders and assaults. Things like diseases, like we're currently in a global pandemic looking at the coronavirus. So we really want to understand how this virus interacts with cells in order to help us come up with a vaccine. People could also potentially use it for growing organs for transplants. Like that's a really big area of biology that we want to be researching into, because sometimes there's a long wait to find a real match. So if we could grow organ transplants and we could save a lot of lives effectively. Biotechnology, you might not realize it, but a lot of your vegetables that you might get in the supermarket might be genetically modified, and so that their characteristics are really ideal for selling and for consuming. So that's biotechnology, that's using cell microbiology to use that. And then you've got plant biology. If I wanted to understand two different plants that look very, very similar, I can use cell biology to see who their ancestors might have been. So they're examples of where cell biology is really important in today's world. So the first thing is, what's the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells? Now, eukaryotic cells are the really, we don't want that, let's give you a pen, are the really kind of complex type of cells that exist, whereas prokaryotic cells are the more simple cells that exist. So that's the easiest way to distinguish between the two. So if you were to categorize them, examples of eukaryotic cells would be animal cells, plant cells, fungi, and protists. They're all examples of complex cells, whereas prokaryotic cells, a really good example of a prokaryotic cell would be bacteria, generally unicellular or simple types of cells. So one of the main things that you really need to be confident with is to understand what organelles are found in animal cells and what organelles are found in plant cells and what the differences might be. So remember, an organelle is all the little structures found within one cell, within a cell, and you're made up of millions and trillions of cells. So if I break that down, so I've drawn a picture of a basic animal and plant cell, and I'm going to go through each organelle and what their function. So when I say function, I'm talking about their job, what they actually do. So the first one I'll start off with in the animal cell is the nucleus. So the nucleus is where all the genetic information is. So things like the chromosomes, which are made up of DNA, is all found within that nucleus. And you can see that both the animal and the plant cell has this. Both also have mitochondria. So mitochondria is where aerobic respiration happens. So really how you release energy. It's a little factory that releases energy, and that's why you get the energy to wake up, run around, play football, play netball, whatever you like to do. It all starts off in the mitochondria. The next thing you can see here I've drawn is the cell membrane. Now again, both animal and plant cells have cell membranes, and it allows substances to go in and out. So they're usually partially permeable, which means they allow small molecules to be able to go in and out, but not really large. So they're quite selective. The next thing you can see, the yellow substance in the cell, that is your cytoplasm, and that's really where all chemical reactions happen within the cell. And then finally, if you look just at this little purple little dot that I've drawn for you, that's your ribosomes. And your ribosomes is where proteins are made. So a really fancy way of saying that is it's the site of protein synthesis. The word synthesis means to make. So you can see all of these things I've drawn, all of these organelles that I've drawn, plant cells also have this. So if I show you a line, there's your mitochondria, there's your nucleus, which contains genetic information. Now, the biggest issue that students sometimes struggle with is to identify which one is the cell membrane of a plant cell. Remember, it's always going to be the inside line out of the two. So the cell membrane is always the inside line out of the two. Then you've got your cytoplasm, which is where your chemical reactions happen, and your ribosomes is where proteins are synthesized or made. So that's where they both share those organelles. However, I'll put a different colour for you. Plant cells have extra organelles. Now these extra organelles is first the cell wall. Now the cell wall is always the outside line when you're trying to label it so you really need to know the difference between the cell wall on the outside versus the cell membrane found on the inside. And the cell wall contains cellulose, so it's really important for that to make that cell rigid and give it support and structure. Then just that big kind of grey substance you see there, that's your permanent vacuole. So the vacuole is where cell sap is, so lots of sugary substances in there. And then the green substance, a green organelle, that's your chloroplast. And your chloroplast is where photosynthesis happens. So it uses light to make its own food. And we really rely on that as human beings because we wouldn't exist if chloroplast didn't exist, because ultimately we eventually come down the food chain to eat plants to get our energy. So if you've understood that, I would pause this video right now and just give yourself an assessment to check that you really understand what the names of the organelles are, whether they're found in animals, plant cells, or both, and what are their functions. So you can either say that out loud and just talk it through, or you might want to pause it and then jot it down on some scrap paper just to check your understanding. So a 5-minute quick check, pause. So to go through some of the answers here for you, the nucleus, the functions of the job of the nucleus, both in animal and plant cells, is where the genetic information is found. So that's really where you find your chromosomes, your DNA, that's where your genetic information is found. Your cytoplasm, again found in both animal and plant cells, is where chemical reactions take place. So all the chemical reactions take place in your cytoplasm. Your cell membrane controls the movement of substances in and out of the cell. So they're usually partially permeable, meaning they are selective. They choose who they allow, which substances can come in and which molecules can go out. Your mitochondria, that factory over there, really important because that's where aerobic respiration takes place. Remember, that's where you release that energy. The energy comes from the mitochondria. It's where it takes place. And then your ribosomes is where protein synthesis occurs, so where you make your proteins within that cell. Your chloroplast absorbs light energy for photosynthesis, so it's a green substance, usually has a pigment called chlorophyll found within the organelle chloroplast. And then you have your vacuole, and that contains cell sap. Remember, chloroplast, vacuole, and cell walls are only found in plant cells. And your cell wall, that's where made from cellulose fibers and strengthens and supports your plant. So I hope that really has made you confident on the difference between animal and plant cells. And just a little wow moment, so something I'd like to share with you that I usually share with my classes is that there's an awesome video that's supported by Google and presented by Tyler DeWitt, and it's called Cellscape, and it's a virtual reality video where you can actually delve in and look at what's happening within a cell, and it really shows you a whole new universe within you, within each one of your trillions and trillions of cells that you're made up of. So I've just embedded it into the video so you can have a little preview of it, but go and click onto the website, go and have a look, and you can just move your iPad or your phone around and you can see the whole functioning of a cell, and it's really, really beautiful. So I hope you really enjoyed that, and I hope you feel a bit more confident with the topic on cells, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye!